So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everybody. Welcome to this webinar session. I'm Tony Schönenberger. I'm the co-founder and executive chairman of STARS. STARS webinars are discussions on future-oriented topics such as geopolitics, technology, climate change, health, and of course, leadership. A select group of people is watching right now, and many more will then see the recording later on YouTube. Today we have the great privilege to talk to Magali Anderson. Magali, great to have you. We are very much looking forward to your insights. Thank you very much for joining this seminar. Magali is the Chief Sustainability and Innovation Officer of Holcim. She has over 3 decades of experience in the energy sector, worked on 4 continents in both operational and functional roles. And Holcim, I suppose everybody knows, but Holcim is the global leader in building materials and solutions. I should also mention that Holcim is a partner and sponsor of STARS. Now, we have approximately 30 minutes to discuss with Magali. I have the privilege to ask the first couple of questions. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function below and type in your questions. And I'd just like to encourage you to do it as fast as possible because 30 minutes are flying by very, very quickly. So let's go into medias res. Magali, may I kindly ask you to say a few words about your company, about Holcim, a few key facts, key figures, facts and figures, so that everybody knows a little bit about this great company.
Sure, Tony. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and good morning or good afternoon for people listening to this today. So Holcim, as you said, is a global leader in material construction, but it's important to understand we are in 70 countries, 2,300 sites, and a bit more than 70,000 employees, with about 26.7 billion Swiss francs net sales. Why it's important to understand that is because as we are going to be talking about sustainability and about what we do, of course, having such a vast geographical footprint brings some complexity to the topic because everything we do is at group level. So of course we are also dependent of where we are and the legal frameworks of the different countries where we live.
Right. Obviously, you're facing and everybody's facing dramatic changes in the built environment, which is a major source, obviously, of global emissions. And I read somewhere that you are actually responsible in Rodicama for 70% of global emissions. Now, Holcim wants to become a net zero company and somehow to move from a typical cement company, obviously now to a net zero company, to becoming part of the solution. Could you please elaborate on your plan and your strategy to become net zero a little bit?
Sure. So to start with, cement is about 7% of the CO2 emission, which is about 5% of the global house gas emissions. The global construction sector is about 38%, but 2/3 of it is the running of the buildings themselves. So sorry, just to put the numbers in perspective. So we did last year, we announced our net zero pledge. Basically, we joined an organization called Business Ambition for 1.5 degree. But we did that with our 2030 target validated by SBTi, Science Based Target Initiative. That was for me extremely important because I'm sure you heard, particularly during the COP26 a few weeks back, there was a lot of discussion about pledges and about how many people, government, companies are now pledging, but a lot of question mark as well on will those pledges turn into actions. That's why for us having a science-based target was so important. So not only we got our 2030 target validated last year when we did our pledge, but this year we were one of the first 7 companies in the world to have their total net zero pathway and target validated by SBTi again, and over the 3 scopes. So for people who don't know the 3 scopes, scope 1 is our own emission, scope 2 is the emission from energy, and scope 3 are the emission of the total value chain. So that's something we announced last year. The first thing we did was to launch our EcoPact concrete range, which is the largest green concrete range in the world. It's now on 24 markets, and we have a target of having 25% of our concrete sales by 2025 made of EcoPact. And again, that's important because it's not just about a long-term commitment, it's about what we are doing today and how we have green product on the market today. What we have announced as well, and I will just go quickly through it because they are all, even though maybe they are less talked about, but in my opinion, they are at least as important. We have also announced our nature strategy. So everyone talks about climate and CO2, but we should never forget about biodiversity, which is everyone needs nature. Everyone needs to preserve and has a role to preserve nature, and particularly companies of our size. So we took a positive commitment on biodiversity, again, with science-based indicator. So it's something that we developed with IUCN, how to measure nature, and we took a positive commitment on that, but also on water, not only to reduce the water in our operations, but also to replenish every fresh water we withdraw. So basically, every drop of water we will withdraw will be given back to nature and to society, again by 2030. So if I add to that our people strategy, where we are looking at how we can influence societal development, such as rural roads, affordable houses, etc., I think we now have a pretty round-up strategy, really, but very much centered of our net zero pledge that we made last year.
Right. Perhaps we could elaborate a little bit more on the, let's call it the technology trends or the key technology trends. When I read your website and listen to your other interviews, you are talking about smart design. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Is that 3D and other technologies?
Yeah, so if we look at how we are going to reduce and what is the challenges, if the global trend of urbanization means that, in short, we have to build New York City on a monthly basis for the next 30 years. We are not going to be able to do that the way we do it today. This is an incredible challenge, and we have to do it at much lower CO2, but also reconciling with nature. So to do it with lower CO2, there's several ways. So the way number one is to reduce, of course, the CO2 of our own product, which is what we did with EcoPact. So we have a target by 2030 to reduce our CO2 of our products by 20. And that's doing
green concrete and green cement, for instance.
Yeah, so EcoPact is our green concrete, which we launched last year. We launched EcoPlanet this year, our green cement, which is today in about 12 markets. So our target of 20% reduction, actually 20% is for the cement, 25% is for the concrete. And by 2030, we are doing it using our traditional levers because we have already reduced our CO2 by 28% since 1990. So it's something we know how to do. It's a matter of deployment, escalating it, doing it in all our geographies, as I was mentioning, which can be sometimes a bit of a challenge. That we know how to do very well. We know how to go to our 2030 target, but it's not going to be enough. What really is needed is that the overall construction world reduces CO2. And for that, you rightly mentioned smart design. How can we design with less concrete, with less cement, and do more with less, which is really what circular economy is all about. Circular economy in our strategy is very important. We recycle almost 50 million tons of waste already today. To put things in perspective, that's about the size of Veolia, this mega waste treatment French company. And we have a target to go to 100 million tons by 2030. So building more with less is important. So you do it by recycling. So for example, here in Switzerland, we have that cement called Susteno, where we put 20% of construction demolition waste back inside. So you take your cement helps you to do your concrete builds something. That something reach end of life. You grind it back, put it straight back in cement. So full circularity, that's the best circularity you can get. We only do it in Switzerland because that's the only country where the norms allows us to do it. But hopefully, end of next year, beginning of the year after, we should be able to deploy that in all the other European countries. So that's the circular economy side of it. But then 3D printing is another methodology which allows us to build the same object with much less concrete in it. And that we will do. I can just give you an example. When we print the feet of a windmills, not only we use way less concrete, we use recycled concrete, so we can really lower our CO2 drastically. But in addition, we can go higher, which means that the windmill is going to provide 25% more electricity for the same mills, for the same object. And that's fantastic because, as you know, renewable energy is one of our biggest current challenge, with cars going to electric cars, etc., etc. So we can really build more with less. We can build more efficiently. We can build things that will have a better output, and that's completely part of our strategy.
Sounds really great, fantastic. Another keyword when I prepared for this session is, I read about carbon capture. Could you explain to us what that actually means?
Yeah, so to understand where our emissions come from, about 30–40% comes from the heating of the kiln. So to do cement, you have to heat a kiln to 1,400 degrees. Today, that we can replace that fossil fuels by waste. So we already have, for example, a plant in Austria, which is at 100% replacement. Most days, 86% of the operation days, they use zero fossil fuel. So that we can do. But then what we heat up is limestone, and the calcination of the limestones creates CO2 and emits CO2. And that there's not much you can do about it. And that becomes what we call clinker. Now that clinker, when we mix it with something else, becomes a cement. So you have cement with 95% clinker, but one of the things you want to do is reduce the clinker factor and replace clinker by things like slag, fly ash, so byproducts of other industry, or novel cement such as calcined clay. So what I call our traditional levers is to reduce as much as we can the clinker that we put in the cement, but also reduce the fossil fuels emissions. So that will take us quite a lot, but there will still be, as long as we make clinker with calcination of limestones, there will always be emissions. Those emissions, the only way to reduce them or to get rid of them will be to capture them. So somehow it's actually good because, sometimes I hear about those direct air capture and I'm like, not sure how that works. At least there is a strong concentration of CO2, so we can capture, currently a normal operation, a normal cement plant would emit maybe 1 million tons of CO2. So you can capture in one go quite a big quantity. And then, of course, the challenge is what do you do with that CO2? So either you are above a depleted oil and gas reservoir, for example, or saline reservoir, and you can inject it in the underground, or you can transform it in something. And we have several pilots. We have about 30 pilots looking at all of this. For example, in Germany, we are transforming it in synthetic fuel so that the aviation industry, to help the aviation industry to reduce their own CO2 footprint. But we can also transform it in minerals, which can then go back to the cement. So again, We also make the CO2 circular, or we can transform it in synthetic plastic, etc., etc. So between now and 2030, we are not going to need, we haven't put carbon capture part of our reduction levers, because carbon capture exists since the 70s, so it's not new. But the last 50 years, there has not been that much effort. There's been pilots, and if you look at today, we capture, the world capture, not we Holcims, the world capture about 40 million tons of CO2. Holcim alone is 110, 120 of scope 1. So as you can see, we are not at the scale of the problem. So we have 1 decade to make that work, and make that work means making it scalable at the right cost with the right technology, plug and play to be able to do it everywhere. I have very great confidence it's going to work, because if you look at the evolution of innovation of many other things, cost of innovation goes down all the time. So I'm trusting, and it's actually a good news that we have a decade. And that's the reason why we have 30 pilots, because we're not just sitting and waiting for it to happen. We are very active, proactive on making it happen.
Now we have many, many questions, and perhaps short question, short answer, if possible. I would just like to ask you one last question from my side. What role does digitalization mean in your company?
So digitalization, we've made a lot of progress in the last few years. There's several digitalization. One is digitalization of our processes, our ordering process, such as concrete direct type of, so we can now e-order, which allows a much better management and efficiency of our processes. We have plant of tomorrow, because one way to reduce the CO2 is having our cement plants much more efficient than before, and it's completely part of our strategy. But we also have digitalization such as 3D printing. So today, you know, I don't know how much people understand how much innovation we do, but I'm not sure you would associate, for example, the word hackathon and the word cement in a normal thing. So not only we were part of Zurich Hack, but we run our own hackathons, such as 3D printing hackathons, etc. So yeah, we actually do a lot on several axes of digitalization.
Now I would like to ask a few questions from our audience. First question from Jens Ostergaard. Is Holcim planning to diversify into sustainable materials such as wood?
So, well, to start with, let's define sustainable materials. But I will answer something about wood. So we just invested in a French company to do wood concrete. So concrete with wood, how do you call it, aggregate, sorry. And so it's not like we are not doing things. We are open to every material. But let's define sustainable material. What is it? It's, you know, people love wood because wood is well renowned as a CO2 capture, natural CO2 capture, natural-based solution. But there's several, you have to look at the total life cycle. And the total life cycle of your product. So the beauty of concrete, it's completely versatile. So you create exactly what you need. You can make much more product with less concrete, as I said, with 3D printing, but also it's fully recyclable, as I explained earlier, which is not the case of other material. It's very durable, so something you built in concrete will last forever, and you don't need that much additives to fight fire or other type of thing that other material will need. So once you do the total life cycle of the product itself, you realize that concrete is very sustainable, but then you should do the total life cycle of the full build. As I said earlier, 70%, 60 to 70% of the energy of the built environment, sorry, of the CO2 of the built environment comes from the management, the life of the building, such as how to heat it up or cool it down. And the thermal inertia of concrete is way better than any other material. So if you look at the full CO2 footprint of the construction sector, you realize concrete is actually the best material that exists today. So again, we are completely open to any others. That's why we invested in that French company. So it's not like we are rejecting it. We're just saying that if we have to build New York City every month, there's no better material to do it than concrete in a sustainable way, really in a sustainable way. There will never be enough supply of other materials such as wood. Today, I think wood is already reaching the limit of capacity of how much they can supply without destroying native forests, etc. So again, we should really have a scientific approach to what is a sustainable material. Yeah. Sorry, long answer.
No, it's okay. Great answer. There's another question from STARS alumna Gordana Kirans. She's professor at the University of Shenzhen, and she's also president of the STARS alumni chapter in Shenzhen. What needs to happen to reach that full circularity in Asia as well? For example, in China.
So today, there's several things that are happening in the different countries. To talk about full circularity, it's not just in Asia, it's everywhere. It's a question of norms. Today, Sustaino contain 20% construction demolition waste. We are working with the Swiss norms to push it to 50%, and no other country is doing, I think the other countries, the average is 5%. So one of the issues we encounter, but not just Holcim, everybody, is that norms are not evolving as fast as innovation. And that's a true problem, because we could really invade every country with some of our products if we could change the norms. And again, I'm not saying which norms are important, but it's really to change the norms. Now, so there's that. And then you have the problem of incentive. Of course, in Europe, having a CO2 price and an allocation system is helping companies like ours, because you are basically, your return on investment on what you are doing is much better than without it. But it doesn't mean we are not doing it in Asia. We are also reusing waste such as slags. Our clinker factor is very good, for example, in India. But even in China, we are using waste with our partner, Huaxin. We are using waste to replace fossil fuels. So it's happening, but because you don't have the type of legal incentive that you have in Europe, it's not happening at the same scale. However, again, our targets are global. So what we are doing in Switzerland, we are doing also in Asia and everywhere else. It's just slower because it's a bit more complicated and more difficult to find the right win-win combination. And of course, we would prioritize where the win-win business versus sustainability is better. I think it's pretty normal for a company to do that.
There's another question by STARS alumnus David Erne from Swiss Re. He is asking, what are the most exciting innovations in the sustainable building material space that may come to market in the next 5 years?
So there are many. I would just name a few. We already talked about 3D printing. I think 3D printing has a fantastic future. If you think of how we've been building the same for thousands of years. The Romans were building the way we are building today. So I think the 3D printing is a true disruption of the way we built, and we have only seen the start of it. But 3D printing should not be looked at as a replacement of traditional building. We have to rethink the way we build via 3D printing and build differently. If not, it's not much point. So that's one. Now, mineralization, absorption of CO2 in our own materials, how to cure concrete with CO2. That's something we are doing with our partner Solidia, for example. So using concrete not just being an emitter of CO2, but also a carbon sink. So there is a natural chemical that happens. Today, the concrete reabsorbs about 25% of the CO2 that has been emitted during the process of making it. But we can accelerate it, and we can use CO2, like I said, to cure the next concrete. And recycling. I really would love to be able to have a concrete that is absolutely 100% recycled with a cement that is 100% recycled. So then we have all the novel cements. There's a lot of excitement about calcined clay. Today we have our calcined clay new project in France. Not only so calcined clay requires less heat, and we have a property way of heating it using waste, which is something and which is patented, and that allows to do our calcined clay at zero, which is we are the only ones who can do that. So many avenues. We are working in all of them. We're not dropping any ball, because I think again the challenge of the future is not so much the incredible super materials that will come up, is the one that will be scalable to the size of the challenge. So it's not having a niche material. We will always find some fantastic niche material. I love them, but they are not solving the problem.
I would like to focus on two other topics, A, on innovation, and B, on leadership in the remaining couple of minutes that we have. Innovation, how does it actually happen at Holcim? How do you organize, if you can organize innovation? How is it happening at Holcim?
So they were already doing a lot on sustainability, but now that innovation and sustainability have been put together, and me, it's really one of those 1 + 1 = 3 or 4. It's been fantastic. So it's a lot of bottom up, so going into the countries and understanding what the countries need, but also top down for the breakthrough material of the future that really would be looked at top down, and a lot of open innovation with our accelerator, where we've been in contact and working very closely with more than 100 startups. So we truly believe that innovation might come from outside or will come from outside, and we want to be actually part of it. That's why we are regularly investing in startups that we believe have a fantastic potential.
Leadership. How do you grow your own leaders of the next generation?
Well, I think it's really a question of talent management, and we have done a fair bit of progress on this in the recent years in Holcim, and it's really not just recruiting people with different, very diverse, and what I mean by diverse is not only gender diversity, it's also diversity of social background, of nationalities, etc., to bring as many people with different thinking, and then get them up the ladder by not only training them with we have a lot of different way of leadership training, of course, as many companies do, but also giving them the right exposure and the right places with the right coaching from the different managers. So I think it's really identifying the people who want, because becoming a leader is also a question of wanting it, who have the capacity, who have the skills, and then making sure that we give them the best condition to grow in the company.
What skills actually do you want if you look for one of your own direct reports?
So, it's funny, because my own direct reports, the skill I want, I think the main skill, if I had to name only one, would be team. I know you hear so much about that, but the best person in the world who is not a team player will not be in my team. So my team works together all the time. I get them when we help each other all the time. So team is very important. Super diverse. For example, I recruited someone who coming from WWF. So she's bringing an NGO eye to, it's a very different angle of looking at things that big corporate people like us do. So super diverse. People who want to change the world. I tell my guys, and my ladies, actually have more women in my team than men. I tell them, you have to be passionate. You can't be in a sustainability job if you're not passionate about the topic. It cannot be an 8 to 5 job and you go home and you stop thinking about it. It doesn't mean I want them to work at home late and weekend, by the way. It's not what I mean. It's really, you should want to do it from your gut. You want to do it. It's not just a job. It's not just a salary. And if you have that, if you have the motivation, the passion, and the team, and if you come from diverse background, then you get a winning team.
Jan and you, Magali, you are really changing the company. And what advice could you give to the participants listening to you, how to drive change in their own companies?
So, I mean, first of all, you have to be, I'm back to the passionate thing. You have to be passionate about it. So really, when you go and see people and explain why it works, in my case, because I have such a strong operational background, I understand operations. So I understand the showstoppers, and that's very important. It's no need to tell someone you should do something if they have different objectives. So you shouldn't put people in front of dilemma. That's why my best friend is actually the CFO. We communicate a lot so that we are aligned in what we ask people, because you cannot ask the operational guy to have to choose between, am I going to do what Magali told me or what Geraldine told me? And this for me would be maybe the most important, is aligning objectives. So people, the majority of people, everybody goes to work wanting to do good. I don't know anybody who goes to work thinking, I'm going to destroy the planet this morning. Everyone wants to do good. You need to give them simple tools so they know how to do it, and one single vision. It sounds a bit stupid, but it's very often where everybody gives contradicting roles, and then just people can't advance. And if you manage to do that, I think you can really progress super fast, because then people are motivated, they have the tools, and they have the objective, and everything is aligned, and they just get the flow running. So.
My very last question is a very personal question. Magali, what keeps you going?
I think I have the best job in the world. I seriously do, because I'm empowered by my boss, obviously, and by the board of directors, to not only change the way we do Holcim, but to change the industry with what we do with the Global Cement and Concrete Association. And what me and my team are doing is actually having an impact on climate change. And that's, I can't think of a better job than mine. So I have to remain motivated every morning when I get up, right?
Great. Well, Magali, unfortunately, the 30 minutes are up. We have to come to an end. First, I want to thank you very much for the brilliant insights, background information, for your analysis of the situation. I think we all benefited a lot from your insights, and I wish you, and of course your company, Holcim, all the best and every success on your exciting journey to net zero. Thank you very much, Magali.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for having me.
Secondly, the next webinar in a week from now will be with STARS alumna Katja Seidenschnur. She is the Sustainability Director, Europe, Middle East, North Africa at Nestle, and the topic will be sustainability and food. I hope to see you there. In the meantime, take care, stay healthy, goodbye, and thank you very much.